Morning, everyone, and welcome to our online service this morning. I feel like I'm fed up counting, but just for the record, we're now on week 11, so I'm glad you could all join us this morning. I thought I'd give you a bit of a different scenery this morning. I'm sure you've all, wherever you are, I've had a really nice weekend so far. So I've moved outside. It looks like my garden shed, but it's actually the outhouse, or probably the doghouse. So yeah, live from the doghouse this morning. Good to see all those that have come along this morning. And again, great to see all the comments as well that you've been doing. Joe and I actually got up early this morning and we jumped in the car and we went for a quick round of golf. So it actually felt kind of normal, a normal morning. My putting was awful, so yeah, it just felt like normal time. So glad you could all join us this morning. Unfortunately, it feels like normal times because we've had a quick message this morning, so I don't know too much detail, but if you can keep Zach in your prayers. My understanding from what I've heard, he was actually mugged last night and some money's taken from him, but I think he's pretty much got a sore face. I think the right side of his face is taken a bit of damage, so keep Zach in your prayers. It can't have been a nice thing to have happened, and unfortunately, maybe things starting to get back to normal, which is obviously what we don't want to hear. So yeah, Zach, hope you're okay, and I hope you're with us this morning, and you're in our prayers. And that goes for anyone. Let's keep those that need them in their prayers this morning. Our order of service, Curvin will be taking us around the Lord's table, and we'll do that next. So if you have your emblems, your bread and your wine, I'm sure Curvin will give thanks for the emblems at the end of his thoughts. So Curvin's going to lead us around Lord's table. We've got a couple of hellos this week, and I know people always like to see what everyone's been up to, so we'll have our usual hellos, although not too many this week, but thank you for those who sent in. And then Ken Mullen is going to be bringing us our lesson this morning, and we're going to do something slightly different this morning. Ken is going to be live from Heanor, so at the appropriate time we'll get Ken on live, and hopefully the satellites align and we'll get that link live by satellite to Ken over at Heanor. So looking forward to Ken bringing us his lesson this morning. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Curvin if he would lead us our thoughts around the Lord's table.
Greetings to all. I could say good morning or even good afternoon or maybe even good night to some. I'm just hoping that this message reaches you all in good health. And I want to thank the church. I want to thank the Adams family for providing this platform where we can still congregate in spirit and hear a message from God. And I'm hoping that this message could uplift you and uplift you spiritually, mentally, or even emotionally. And I just pray for anyone, that may be suffering from any coronavirus symptoms, or, your loved ones may have been ill. We're praying for you. Just want to pray for you. And, during this time, we've all been in lockdown, all across the world. You're either in different phases of this lockdown. Maybe you're at the beginning phase, you're at the peak, or you're going past the peak and right down to social distancing, and it's starting to get about. But we have to continue to pray. And during this lockdown, I got a message on Facebook Messenger. And I'm going to say one of my fans, sent me a message and said, look, I want to do an interview with you. So some of you may be thinking, an interview? Well, my old life, I was a DJ. Some of you know, some of you may not know. I was a DJ. And this DJing took me around the world. Took me in parts of Canada, America, then in the Caribbean, and of course my home country, Bermuda, primarily in Bermuda. And at any given party, we could have had 500 people. We could have had 3,000, even 4,000 people at our parties. So these parties was huge. So he says to me, I want to do an interview with you of the history of your DJing and, where it started and, and where it got you to today. Just it was more like a documentary of my DJing life. Now, my DJing, it wasn't just me, it was a few other crew members that was there. But I want to get to how he explained it, like the build up to the interview on Facebook. He explained it like this. He says, listen, He idolized us. He was saying it's going to be an honor to speak to someone like me, a privilege to speak to a real master of ceremony. He said, he referenced us as the Pied Piper because everyone followed us. Like I said, he idolized us, he said. He went as far to say that we were the God of music. So when he's saying this, the way he spoke of us was if there was a crown for DJs, he would have placed a crown on my head. He would have placed a crown on my head the way he spoke of us. He held us in high authority. He said we were honorable, privileged, real masters of ceremony. And like I said, if there was a crown for DJs, he would have placed a crown on my head. So when we think of a crown, traditionally, it's a symbolic form of headwear. Now don't get it confused with a hat. Not a hat, it's a crown. And it's worn by a monarch, I should say. Worn by a monarch or by a deity. The crown normally or traditionally represents power, legitimacy, victory, triumph, honor, and glory, as well as immortality, even righteousness and resurrection. Crowns worn by rulers often contain jewels. Let's just speak about the crown jewels of the United Kingdom. The gold, silver, and platinum crown is decorated with 2,868 diamonds, 273 pearls, 17 sapphires, 11 emeralds, 5 rubies. Among the largest stones are the 317 carat Cullinan 2 diamond, also known as the second star of Africa, added to the crown in 1909. That's a crown we're talking about, a crown. But today I'm going to take it to another level. You may know where I'm going with this. And I'm going to speak from a Greek word, Stephanos. And that's the crown in the Greek word. Crown translated in Greek is Stephanos. And I'm going to be reading from Matthew 27:29. And this is what it says. Matthew 27 and 29. And when they had plaited what? A Stephanos of thorns, or a crown of thorns, they put it on his head. And they reed in his right hand, and they bowed the knee before him and mocked him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews. Now this crown was to carry on the humor of making Jesus a mock king. Yet if it was only for reproach, they could have plaited a crown or straw of rushes. But they designed it to be painful. But there was a mystery in it. Thorns came in with sin and were a part of a curse that was a product of sin. If you go back to the beginning, Genesis 3:18, when Adam went against God, thorns was a part of his curse. Therefore, Christ being made a curse for us and died to remove the curse from us. He felt the pains of the thorns, for his sufferings for us were his glory. Now think about it. Thorns signify afflictions. These thorns that was in the crown, they fetched blood from his blessed head, which trickled down his face. Christ was crowned with thorns to show that his kingdom was not of this world, nor the glory of it worldly godly. So the next time you think of a crown, consider this. The crown of thorns was placed on Jesus' head. He felt pain. It was affiliated with sin. It was affiliated with a curse, affiliated with suffering, affliction, blood trickling down his face. So then you ask yourself this question. Why would an honorable, sinless, integral, God on earth, like I spoke about earlier, God on earth, a man full of dignity, it's a privilege to be in his presence, a king, a real master, a true leader, allow a crown of thorns to be placed on his head that caused him so much pain and agony? Why would a person like that do this? We're talking about Jesus, the one that can get us from earth to heaven. Why would he allow a crown of thorns be placed on his head? It's only one word I can think of. One word I can think of right now is a 4-letter word, and that's love. So, as we take part in this communion, think of the love that Jesus had for you and for me. Let us pray. God, our Heavenly Father, the God of all, the King, the Master, our ruler, our provider, the one that sits high and looks low, that whom all blessings flow. Bless us at this time, God. Bless the elements we are about to take, if we are taking them at this time. If we're able to take them at this time, God. Bless them. Bless the fruit of the vine. That represents the blood that poured from his side when he was on that cross, and that crown that was placed on his head. Bless the unleavened bread that represents his blood, his body, that was bruised and it was mocked and it was ridiculed. Be of us, God. Be of our minds, that we can always be mindful of the crown of thorns that was placed on his head, that caused so much pain and agony for all of us. Continue to be of us and keep us all safe and guide us and protect us. In Jesus' name we pray. Thank you all for tuning in, and I'm hoping this was an upliftment to your spirit.
Thanks, Curvin, for your thoughts around the table and that reminder about the crown. I really did appreciate that. Just a bit of feedback that people maybe don't have time to take their bread and the wine, so let's just pause for a moment whilst people, if you have wanted to partake of those now, then do that now. So yeah, again, thank you, Curvin, for your thoughts around the Lord's table. We're quickly going to move on to the what we call the family news, where we catch up with what people are up to this week. Not many
Tail. Tail.
Can you see her tail?
Yeah. Pond. Yum.
What's she eating?
Pond. Pond. Look.
What's that there?
Don't know.
It's a swan.
Pond.
It's having its lunch, isn't it? Poppy's feeding it.
Yeah. Tail.
Measure it.
No.
Easy.
I'm just not going to drop it from there.
Yeah. Open up. Go everywhere.
Did you want your pants moving now?
You'll be alright.
That should be alright.
And as you can see, Lisa and her dad are complying with his new socially distancing measures. Always good to see what Poppy and Dottie are up to. As you know, I'm their agent, I'm their Mr. 10%, so if you want to book them, then come via me and we'll get something sorted, because those two are going to be stars. A few announcements before we go live to Ken with his lesson this morning. Curvin made our thoughts around the Lord's table, and Curvin has acquired what we call little sort of packets of bread and wine, and I think now that with we're able to have almost that free movement, we'll perhaps arrange or start to arrange this week getting those things to those who require it. So if you want to drop us a message, either in the comments or just on the page, I'm sure if you'd like to have that, we have a fair number available to us. So let us know if you'd like to have some of those, and we will arrange to get those started to be distributed out to whoever needs it. So let us know one way or another if you'd like to have those. Usual announcements. Bob has again on this site his Monday night Bible class, and the title I gave out last Sunday is the title of the Bible class this Monday. So if you're intrigued and you want to know who was right between me or Bob, tune in this Monday for Bob's Monday night class. And then as Ken does as well, Ken has a Wednesday night class as well, and we get some great feedback about how encouraging people find both those sessions. So encourage you to join in this week on Monday and Wednesday for Bob and Ken's Bible class. And as I mentioned last week as well, Callum's Malawi update is still on the site. As always, remember those who need to be remembered in your prayers, and if there is anyone that you'd like us to remember next week, again, get a message to us and we'll make sure that those people are included. So great to see so many of you with us this morning. And then what I'm going to suggest is, with Ken coming on live, that this particular submission will end, and therefore you should see another notification for Ken, who will be coming on live. So this particular recording will cease, and then maybe give it 20-30 seconds, and I'm sure you'll see Ken start his lesson. What I'll probably ask Ken to do is just give it sort of 30 seconds or a minute so before he actually goes into his lesson. So maybe Ken will give us a bit of preamble before he starts. So thanks all for joining us this morning, and we're going to finish our service this morning with Ken bringing us his lesson. Over to Ken.
Well, while all of you are making the transition from what Derek had to say and what I will share with you in a couple of moments' time, grateful as always for the opportunity to be involved, and appreciate all your kind remarks and encouraging words. They're always appreciated, because they do make a difference to somebody's life, mine included. So keep up the good work, because we are all in this together. I've given this lesson today the title of Very Special. And no doubt in your circle of friends there are probably individuals that you consider to be very special. And they're special probably for a variety of reasons. And if you were given the opportunity, you would probably tell me all about what it is about them that makes the difference. But I'd like initially to ask you a question. When God finished the Old Testament, and by that I mean that according to way for us, the voice of Malachi concluded, and for a number of years, 400 apparently, the voice of God fell silent. But then things began to happen. There was a baby born in Bethlehem. He aroused the anger of a king who didn't want him around, had to escape with his parents to Egypt, and then they came back when it was safe. And he grew up in the world of his day, and the vast majority of people were eager to hear what he had to say, etc. But let me ask you this. Consider it for yourselves. We have a New Testament that contains 27 books. Why did God write them? What is the purpose behind the 27 that you and I will probably spend more time examining because of the subject within them? I would suggest to you that one of that the New Testament was written by our God is to tell us about one individual who is, for every believer, very, very special. For example, consider these verses that appear in the four Gospels. When Matthew began his account of Jesus' life, he said, "This is a record of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham." Of course, by that description, he would be appealing primarily to a Jewish audience. Mark, likewise, when he began his account of the history of Jesus, said that his gospel is the beginning of the gospel about Jesus Christ, the Son of God. And primarily, Mark tells a lot about the miracles that Jesus did, and therefore underlines the power that he possessed. When Luke decided to add his version of the life of Jesus, in a couple of verses, when Mary was informed by the angel that she was to have a child, here's what the angel said: "You will be with child and give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. The Lord will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over the house of Jacob forever. His kingdom will never end." And as far as I know, throughout the Gospel of Luke, the way Jesus is described is that he is the Son of Man, which would indicate to me that he is the man of the people. He wants to be involved. He wants to say those things that people will conclude that not only is Jesus special, but so am I from God's point of view. Well, of course, when John decided to take up his pen, the other three had already contributed to our understanding of who Jesus is. And he said at the beginning of his, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning." So we do realize from John's account that the person that we are dealing with in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John is somebody extraordinary. So God writes 4 portraits, if you like, of his beloved Son, and then he writes 23 commentaries as to how that son of his will fit into your life, to influence your world, to do for each of us something that none of us could do for ourselves, in that his purpose in coming, all four of the Gospels declare, is that he came here to save us. Now, in light of the books that have been written concerning him, I have actually chosen to read a portion out of one of those books that comments on what Jesus means to those who believe. Here's what the Hebrew writer had to say. It is not to angels that he has subjected the world to come, about which we are speaking. But there is a place somewhere where someone has testified, what is man that you are mindful of him, the Son of Man that you care for him? You made him a little lower than the angels. You crowned him with glory and honor, and put everything under his feet. In putting everything under his feet, God left nothing that is not subject to him. Yet at present we do not see everything subject to him. But we see Jesus, who was made a little lower than the angels, now crowned with glory and honor, because he suffered death, so that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone. In bringing many sons to glory, it was fitting that God, whom and through whom everything exists, should make the author of their salvation perfect through suffering. Both the one who makes men holy and those who are made holy are of the same family, so Jesus is not ashamed to call them brothers. He says, I will declare your name to my brothers. In the presence of the congregation, I will sing your praise. And again, I will put my trust in him. And again he says, here am I, and the children God has given me. Since the children have flesh and blood, he too shared in their humanity, so that by his death he might destroy him who holds the power of death, that is, the devil, and free those who all their lifetime were held in slavery by their fear of death. For surely it is not angels he helps, but Abraham's descendants. For this reason, he had to be made like his brothers in every way, in order that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in service to God, and that he might make atonement for the sins of the people. Because he himself suffered while he was tempted, he is able to help those who are being tempted. One author described those words of the book of Hebrews as probably some of the finest that he ever came across and was privileged to comment upon. I mean, I think that the whole book of Hebrews has only one purpose in mind right from the very first verse until its end, is to tell us why it is that Jesus is so very, very special. The author decided to write the book, and he has made his references in what we've just read. Some of the things that kind of stood out for me is, number one, the psalmist in Psalm 8 declared that God is mindful of me. He's mindful of you. And you know, when I had a look at what that language actually means, you know, God never takes time out from your life or mine. He's always on the job, so to speak. From the minute we open our eyes in the morning until we go back to sleep in the evening, whatever it is we may be involved in during the day, our God is actually saying, I actually know where you are. You remember the incident in the garden when Adam and Eve found themselves naked and ashamed of what they had done. They decided to hide, and yet God came asking the question, where are you? And of course, the question wasn't asked from God's point of view. He wanted man to realize exactly where he was. God knows where you are. And because he is mindful of everything about us, he also is aware of the fact of exactly everything in life that you and I may need. I mean, the greatest need that any of us had in these verses in Hebrews chapter 2 make it clear is that God sent his one only very special Son to save us from our sin, to set us free from the fear of death, to set us free from the clutches of the devil so that we could live life to the full. And because God is aware of all of our needs, you and I are fortunate in that he looks after us. And to a degree, we look after him. Because we will make the world aware of the fact that a God such as we do, mindful of us, the way in which we live our lives is the clear declaration that we are mindful, that he looks after us. But not only is God mindful of us, again, according to Psalm 8, used by the author of these verses in Hebrews 2, he said that God cares for us. You know, one of the saddest verses, perhaps, that is found in the Old Testament, and everybody knows the story of David's life, how there were times when he was on the run because people were out to get him. There were times when, no doubt, he feared for his very life. And according to Psalm 142 and verse 4, it says that David was in a state of anguish because he said, there is no man who cares for my soul. Now, obviously, it must have come at a time in David's life when he felt perhaps alone, perhaps abandoned, perhaps that he was afraid of your hell for him. And so in that kind of approach, as far as David is concerned, nobody cares for me. And yet, for us, we have verses in the New Testament that attempt to affirm for our benefit that as far as God is concerned, I care about you and I care deeply. You know, First Peter chapter 5, verse 17 declares, cast all your cares upon him because he cares. Didn't Jesus say in Matthew chapter 11, come unto me, all ye who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Come and learn from me. You see, if God didn't care about us, he wouldn't have sent his son. Jesus would have remained in heaven without having to embark upon a journey that would bring him here and subject him to all the ridicule, the abuse. The treatment that he received is absolutely awful. But in spite of the fact that he knew all about it, he still came. And through that, God declares he cares for us. But not only is God mindful of us, which means that he knows where we are and he knows what we need. Not only does our God care for us, because in the sending of his Son, he sent a very clear message, but in addition, by the work of his fingers, the sun, the moon, the stars, and the world that God made, I was a part of it. See, I find it absolutely staggering when you consider the number of people that are currently living on planet Earth. See those, my fingers, the prints at the end? Apparently, they are unique. Nobody else has them, so that if I was ever involved in committing a crime and my fingerprints were left at the scene, the police would be able, if they had, access to the records, they'd be able to come knock on my door and say, you were there because we have the evidence. But I am unique. You see, I was created in the image of God, and because I was created in the image of God, then remember, according to Hebrews, God intended from the very beginning that I should exercise dominion or rule over the world that he brought me into. Because if you go back to Genesis chapter 1 from verse 24 to the end, the concept of rule is mentioned twice. And part of the rule that Adam exercised was the animals which at that time were part of a world. He said, this is what you are, and this is what you will be. So man, at least for a while, exercised his rule over the world that God brought him into. But by the time you get to chapter 3, that rule is placed in jeopardy. Man, by virtue of his sin, even though he tried to pin the blame on somebody else, but it didn't work, God therefore told him that he could no longer live in the paradise that he had created for them. And from that day on, our world sees the curse that descended upon our world because of sin. But you see, I am, according to Psalm 139, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. As a human being, as an individual, I am unique. There is nobody else like me. So, because God created me, He created me for a higher purpose. And the purpose is that if I search often enough and long enough, sooner or later I will come in contact with the man they call Jesus. Because the verses that we read after the author is declared that we no longer exercise the dominion that once we had, that dominion has been sacrificed because of selfish reasons, for the reasons of sin itself. But notice as the author said, but we see as crowned with glory and honor. And of course, the purpose for Jesus being crowned with glory and honor is that he came here in order that he might be able to give us the opportunity of becoming his brothers, his sisters. Our is interested actually in having the largest family on the face of the earth. He's not interested in the color of your skin. He's not interested in the language that you speak. He's not interested in the country that you live in. What he is interested in is are you his? And if you are his child, then as far as God is concerned, his son Jesus, who tasted death for everyone, we therefore reap the benefits of the sacrifice that Jesus has made on our behalf. And if you look at what he has actually accomplished as a believer, we have confidence in the comments that he made when he went to the home of a friend of his who he'd been informed he'd fallen ill, and his sisters asked for his help. He waited for a period of time before arriving at the house, and when he did, they basically chastised him by saying, if only you'd been here, my brother would not have died. And those sisters made the same comment. But Jesus, in reply to both of them, made the declaration, I am the resurrection and the life. He believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And of course, when he made that declaration to the two sisters concerned, he required a response from them. And what he said is, do you believe it? And one of them replied that, yeah, I believe it, that there will be a resurrection at the last day. And no, Jesus said, I'm talking about now, very minute. Do you believe what I said? And so they go to the grave, they roll away the stone, they call for Lazarus to come forth, and he does. But you see, all of us in a sense, from the minute we took our first breath, are destined one day to pass from this world. None of us know when it will be accomplished, but we do know that along the way, Jesus has said the purpose for him coming is that we might have life and have it more abundantly. And because he wants us to have that abundant life, he therefore declares that I don't want you to be afraid of death. I have taken away its sting. I have emptied the grave of its victory. And you can live your life in the knowledge that when your time here is called up, I'll take you home with me. But then you see, in addition to the fear of death, we're also frustrated many, many times by the devil who seeks to interfere in our lives. He was a part of us before we encountered Jesus, and he controlled how we lived. He controlled what we thought. He controlled what he did all of that, and he had great pleasure in the fact that that was the way we were. But then came Jesus. And from the minute that Jesus was introduced into our world, the devil was on notice that something terrible was going to happen to him. That Jesus would come along, and there is a verse in 1 3, I believe it's verse 8, which says that the purpose for the coming of the Son of God was to destroy the devil's work. The word destroy, as far as I know, the idea that he wants to take away the power which the devil has to entice God's children to do the devil's work. He will extract that power from him, and by the cross it is being accomplished. I mean, there's a verse in James chapter 4 that reminds us that if you resist the devil, according to James, he'll flee from you. And you know, one of the reasons why the devil will not stay and attempt to confront us is that we do and are exactly the same as Jesus when he was tempted. The response, no matter what the devil said, was, "Thus saith the Lord." And because it is written in the Word, and you and I spend our time accumulating what the Word has to say, when the devil comes, is the word we use to send him on his way. Every time the devil is knocked back by us, he's frustrated in his attempts. He doesn't get any pleasure from us anymore, but God does from us, because we will resist him. We will even stomp on him, but whatever it is we need to do. The devil is a defeated foe, and we can rejoice in that. Because according to Revelation 12, it says that he, that is Jesus, overcame him, the devil, by the power of his blood and by the word of their testimony. See, Jesus is and always will be a very, very special person. Because not only has he defeated death, not only has he taken the devil's power away from him, but he now exercises his on our behalf as he sits at the Father's right hand. The last verse suggests that when any of us are in trouble, whatever the nature of the trouble might be, when you find yourself in a situation like that, and you know that there is somebody available to help you, you know what you do? You cry out for their help. Well, the word help in those final verses is the idea of somebody running to help. So, I mean, you know, I try and imagine that when Jesus was on the cross, he said that if he had one word to utter, angels would vacate heaven and come and rescue him. But I don't know if an angel would come and rescue me, but I do know that if I cried for help, God would run. Because I'm his child. I'm a part of his family. I'm precious to him. And I matter. And because those things are true, he declares that I am a special, special person. Aren't you glad that Jesus is a part of your life? He has taken the time and the trouble to write the record of you as life, not just in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but then to explain the significance of that life, everyday existence, of the help that he provides, of the support that he gives, of the life we are called to live. All these things we do for the precious name of the God we serve. This is a day full of wonder, because as far as we're concerned, this is the day that God has set aside, and according to the Psalms, we will always rejoice and be glad in it. May God bless you as you think about these words that were written in the book of Hebrews and the message that follows it. Take care of yourselves. God and cares for you and is very mindful of everything that you need. So take care. See you on Wednesday night. Look forward to you. Amen.